As a leader in today's world, it is important how to create an inclusive environment. And it's important that the leaders, you, me, are the driving force behind making the changes that are necessary, not just racially, but there's so many different other areas that you've got to make sure that the environment that you have is conducive for growth. The environment that you have is conducive for winning. The environment that you have is conducive for making people feel comfortable so that they can go out there and they can perform at the highest level.
Are you ready? We're gonna run the play. Let's go. Do you know what it's like to come from nothing at all, but every day you just wanting it all? Do you know what it's like? Every day facing your fear, but believing that your blessing is near. Do you know what it's like? Growing up broken than most, but still being devoted the most. Do you know what it's like? Yeah, that's what the journey's about. Yeah, let me show you how.
What's going on, y'all? This is Justin Owens. Welcome to the Run the Play show, where we give you the top plays when it comes to your business, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to communication and branding and so forth and so forth. I'm Justin Owens. I'm your host, and I'm excited about this episode because these are skills that pretty much every leader needs to develop this year. I'm talking about you cannot procrastinate to the next year or the year after that or the year after that. I'm talking about right now. Number one right now on my list is emotional intelligence. That is a skill that you really got to master. All right, Justin, what is emotional intelligence? It is the ability to manage both your own emotions and understand the emotions of people around you. There's a lot of entrepreneurs or leaders that are maybe in an influential role that they sometimes can understand their own emotions, but they can't understand others. Or they understand other people's emotions, but they don't know how to understand their own. And then they can't even express it. And there's 5 elements to this. Number 1 is self-awareness, which is really, really big. You gotta learn how to become self-aware, right? Self-regulation, which I think that's one of the most important skills for a leader. Like the ability to self-assess and self-adjust is important for everyone, because you're not always going to have somebody there to tell you what you need to do or how you need to do it, okay? You also have motivation, empathy, and social skills. So you got to learn, like, how do I develop it? You got to read some books on it, right? There's a lot of books on emotional intelligence. Just look them up. Use it to lead people effectively and understand why it matters. Number 2 is mindfulness and self-awareness. This kind of goes into what we just talked about, but mindfulness is, I had to realize as a leader, my communication was very, very important. Especially like when you start running a real business, there's questions I learned that I couldn't ask. Like you can't, like when somebody calls in sick or they say they can't show up for it, you can't just ask them why. So you've got to understand mindfulness. You got to cultivate skills and become a better leader. That helps you to lead a more fulfilling life. See, when you understand like mindfulness of people, is like you start understanding the power of words and why words are so important. Like, I used to ask people, what's wrong with them? And then I learned to say, man, what's troubling you? Or like, what's on your mind? Because I had to start understanding that there's words that you can say that can actually trigger people. If you ask somebody what's wrong with them, the automatic response is what? Nothing, I'm good. Like, man, what's on your mind, man? It seems like you got a lot going on. It's awareness. And it's understanding how to do that. Why? Because as a leader, your job is to have as many people around you operating at a high level, okay? Number 3, really, really big, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a leader in today's world, it is important how to create an inclusive environment. And it's important that the leaders, you, me, are the driving force behind making the changes that are necessary, not just racially, but there's so many different other areas that you've got to make sure that the environment that you have is conducive for growth. The environment that you have is conducive for winning. The environment that you have is conducive for making people feel comfortable so that they can go out there and they can perform at the highest level. Number 4, and I think I'm gonna probably do a whole video on this, but remote working and virtual leadership. How to lead and manage teams effectively in a remote or virtual setting. In today's world, not everybody's working in a leadership role is walking by your desk. Or they can just come down to a different level. They can just come down and talk to you. No, you've got to now learn. Okay, things have adapted in today's world. You may be working with people overseas, in different countries, on other parts of the world, maybe in your same state, but in a different place. You're not in the same facility. How do you lead? in that type of environment is going to be very, very important. It's going to be over the next decade, one of the skills that not only leaders need to master, but they have to continue to hone in and continue to work on. Number 5 is entrepreneurship and innovation. Stories and lessons from successful entrepreneurs are so important right now on how to cultivate a culture of innovation, the importance of taking risk in business. I mean, you look at some of the top podcasts today, what are they doing? They're talking to entrepreneurs. Why? To get their stories, to get their lessons. That's one of the reasons that this show was put together, is because I want you to talk to entrepreneurs, but I don't want you to just hear about their wins. They're not on here to just sell you a course. I want you to hear about their experience. I want you to hear about their wins. I want you to hear about their losses. I want you to hear about, more importantly, their lessons that allowed them to get through that you can apply. I believe in business, there's this thing called transferable skills. And while we may not go through the same thing, is there a skill that you learned? Is there a lesson that you learned over here that can transfer into my world, that can transfer into my life? Number 6, adaptability and resilience. How to cope with change and uncertainty. When you look at today's world, isn't that what it is? Uncertainty and change. Really, really big. Why? Because you welcome to entrepreneurship. There is no consistency. You got to make it consistent. So you got to be able to have the ability to adapt, but also cope with it. What is cope? I think one of the things I've just learned to do is realize I don't control nothing, except for my attitude and my activity. That's literally it. You don't control people. We don't control the market. And so what's important, though, in the midst of being able to cope with it is, as a leader, your ability to be resilient through those times with yourself, first and foremost, with your teams, with your leaders. Number 7, huge. Communication is one of the most important skills for a leader to master, but also conflict resolution. Learning effective strategies for communicating others, right? Especially when the stakes are high. Resolving conflict, especially when the stakes are high, and building stronger and deeper relationships. They always say that some of the biggest teams, some of the best teams, some of the best companies, a lot of them fail not because of the outside force, but a lot of it's because of internal conflict. And so a lot of times businesses at the beginning, you're preparing yourself for external, threats. You do these things called SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And at the beginning, you're looking at like, man, this company could do this, or this could happen, or this could happen. This person they could scam me here, or they could do chargebacks. You look at all the external threats, but what about the internal threats? What about creating an environment where it's not safe for people to bring you challenges, where people they may overlook outside threats? And so now what happens is your internal threats become more dangerous because they stop caring about the external threats, which cause more problems, or people just stop caring. They say a lot of times people quit internally way before they leave, meaning there'll be a body there. They're still collecting the check. Mentally, they have checked out. So communication, building those relationships, diving deeper in the relationship building, that is a skill that I believe every entrepreneur needs to learn this year. And so here's what I would say. Can you master them all today? No. But I want you to look at the list and I want you to say, okay, man, what is an area that I really could get better at? And what's a good way to find out? Talk to the people around you. Man, if you're in a relationship, your significant other probably tells you the area that you're slacking in this area already. And you got to start picking up those clues. I start picking up clues from personal relationships, from things that are saying, people that are saying about me, sometimes in business, from the people that are close to you, because there are a lot of times the people that know you the most. But also, remember I talked about the self-awareness, is that you got to look at yourself and be like, okay, man, I've got to get better. Maybe in communication. Maybe like one of the things I had to do at one point was I had to start getting a dictionary and start looking up words, because I said, man, I've got to expand my vocabulary so that I can express myself clearer. How can I express myself in a way that people aren't offended when I say something? Because a lot of times, do you know that a lot of times people are offended? They actually don't understand what you're saying. And so if you're a good communicator, you can adjust what you're saying. You ever said something to somebody and they be like, what you say? You're like, no, here's what I mean. And if your here's what I mean is better, then they calm down. But you ever said that to somebody and then they explain what they meant and it makes you more upset? All right. So that is why communication is really, really big. So, working on your vocabulary. I really look at leadership. I really look at business. I really look at this space as like working out in the gym. A lot of you all know I've been in the gym. I've been working out really, really consistently. And so when I'm working out, my trainer's like, okay, what area do you want to grow? What's your goal? And then we start targeting different areas based on my goal. And so you guys say, okay, man, these are my goals for this year. For me to be able to have that happen, what needs to happen inside of my team? Who do I need to attract? What relationships do I need to grow stronger, right? Who do I need to have better or stronger relationships with in my circle? And then you got to start building those areas just like you build your body. It's not by accident. Is by intentionality. So these are the skills that I know every leader needs to learn this year. I just gave y'all the play. Now you go run it. Did you get yours yet? The uniform for entrepreneurs all across the world. New Age CEOs. Go to newageceos.com. Make sure you get your uniform. Make sure you get your gear and represent all around the world.
Are you ready? We're gonna run the play. Let's go. Do you know what it's like to come from nothing at all, but every day you just wanting it all?